welcome to my channel. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Today's pen cadaver on the slab ready for resurrection is this 1936 Waterman's 92V lever filler in green pearl celluloid. It took me quite a while to find the date and actual model number of this beautiful fountain pen. The model number stamped into the bottom finial of this pen is a 52V, but the research I did on the 52V doesn't match this pen at all. My pen friend Murray introduced me to the website of the Pen Collectors of America. I'll put the link in the description for you. This website is an archive of pen flyers, manuals, catalogs, and pen company newsletters spanning decades. Looking through the archived catalogs of the Waterman pens from the 1930s, I found this page from 1936 where the pen fifth from the left is identical to this pen. It is the 92V. The 92 models were larger and had the trapezoidal ball clips, while the models designated with the V were smaller and had the Art Deco style clip with the hexagon on the top. They were considered modestly priced pens at $3.50, suitable for boys and girls at school. $3.50 in today's dollars would be around $82 US. So why is this one stamped 52V? All I can surmise is this pen having been made in Canada, and that would be the Waterman factory in Montreal. And as we've seen with both Parker and Waterman, the Canadian pen plants would often do their own thing, depending on what parts they had on hand from the US operations and which parts they could manufacture themselves. So you might get some mismatched parts, making for some very interesting head-scratching models. Well, that's my guess anyway. So let's take a look at this fountain pen and see what it needs to come back to the world of the living and the writing. Overall, you can see it is made of that beautiful pearlescent gray, brown, and white pearlescent celluloid that Waterman called green pearl, and it's a very short pen. It measures only 4 1/4 inches when it's capped. Here it is compared to a Waterman Stalwart of the early 1940s, and you can see it's almost a full inch shorter. In the style of the day, they made pens for men and they made pens for ladies or boys and girls, and even posted the 92V is almost a full inch shorter. There doesn't seem to be any brassing on the clip at all, and that is wedged in there with those blades, so it won't be coming out. So I'll be polishing up this cap with the clip in place. There is one gold band. There is a good amount of tarnishing on the gold, but the celluloid is in excellent shape. Just typical wear for almost 90 years of existence. You can see on the cap there's an imprint, it says Waterman's, made in Canada. You can see some of that wear right there. It has 1, 2, 3 breather holes, and one of them is in a unique place, sort of not in line with the others. People often ask what those breather holes are for. Well, when you have a fountain pen that has a collapsible latex sac inside it, pressure changes will squirt ink through the pen. So even just removing the cap like that, if there weren't holes in there, would cause a pressure differential, a negative pressure, and ink would spurt out the nib. So they put the breather holes in there to equalize the pressure. On the barrel, we see another imprint that says Waterman's, made in Canada, with the Ideal logo right there in the center, like that globe kind of shape, and fountain pen. And the imprint on the barrel is much deeper than the one on the cap. And of course that erroneous 52V stamp on the bottom. And there's the lever. It's a boxed lever, and it has a little bit of what looks like brassing on the very, very tip. But again, I've been fooled, and sometimes what looks like brassing is actually just tarnish. And if I operate the lever, it feels like there's something in there. Not sure exactly what. Uncap the pen and we see the ebonite section, which has some oxidation visible. Maybe you can't see it on camera. It's sort of a dull brown kind of a look to that ebonite. It means it's beginning to oxidize. So that can be polished out. We'll see how well I can do at that. And there is the nib. And it says Waterman's Ideal Canada, number 2, And on the shoulder, it's engraved. I have to get my loupe to see. It's engraved FDW, which is FD Waterman. What's on the other shoulder? On the other shoulder is imprinted or engraved 2 hallmarks surrounding 14K sort of this direction and 585 that direction for the gold content. So that's 14K 585 purity gold, and it's in excellent shape. You can see that there's a smallish gap right there and a good amount of tipping material, and it looks to me like a medium. That looks perfect. And the ebonite feed has, upside down, read it this way, it says Waterman's patented and 007384. I'm not sure. That'll polish up nicely. So we're going to get out a rubber mat and see if we can, yep, the section is loose. Yeah, there was a latex sack in there, but it's broken off here at the top, and that's pretty desiccated and hard. And that means I'll have to, there's the lever working. The lever looks pretty good, but I'll have to dig that old desiccated sack out of there. See if we can get at it with some tweezers to start. Oh, I twisted a bit. There we go. Yeah, came out pretty nice. And it's hard as a rock back here. So it's been in this pen for a long time, but I think not as long as 89 years. Now, let's see if we can examine. Yeah, there's still remnants of that sack in there. I'm going to get out my inspection camera and go down inside the barrel and inspect it. And we'll see if the pressure bar is in good shape or not, hopefully. And while I'm down inside there, you can see that it's fairly translucent in that barrel. Some nice translucency. So once this is polished up, it should look spectacular. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to soak all these parts in some pen flush in the ultrasonic bath for just a couple of minutes to loosen up some old ink and things like that. And then I'll peel that old latex sack off of that section, and we'll get that feed and nib out of there. And here's the section out of the bath. I've got the old sack off of there, soaked off some old ink, I'm sure. We'll put this in the block and knock out that nib. And find the smallest hole possible and begin to pound. That was dead simple. And there's our nib. Put it over here on the left so you can see what it looks like before, and we'll polish it up and put it over on the right. Nice heart-shaped breather hole. Those are very nice. And see what it looks like on the back as well. Tarnished with years of ink. And there's the ebonite feed. Waterman's patent number. Very hard to read what that number is, very blurry. But we'll polish up that visible part of that ebonite. Interesting shaped feed. And of course the section, we'll do some polishing on that. And we'll see whether the brown oxidation comes out with some polish. In the meantime, I've had the cap and the barrel in some pen flush, and I've gotten out most of that old sack that was attached to that lever and inspected it with my inspection camera, and that lever seems to be working perfectly, moving up and down on that channel. The lever is attached to that channel on the pressure bar. So we'll put those parts aside so they can be polished later, but let's polish up this nib section and feed first. And here are the section, feed, and nib all polished up. The section's looking pretty good. Got rid of most of that brownish hue. Very shiny. The feed is very, very shiny indeed. Still can't make out that patent number, but it doesn't matter. And there's our gorgeous nib, all shined up to perfection. Beautiful. And even the underside. All that ink is gone, and it's shining like brand new. Now we have to put the nib, feed, and section back together again and put a latex sack on that section. And we're going to use a number 16 size sack for that purpose. But first we have to get that nib and feed back in that section again. I like to rough up the back end of the feed on these ebonite feeds a little bit with some 400 grit sandpaper just to get them a little bit slippery with some ebonite dust, which you can see is brown. It's turned a little bit brown. And I like to put the section back in the barrel to give it some more grip. I always do that last for some reason. I forget to do it. Today I remembered. Do it first. Like, put the goddamn sleeve on first. PD, GD, SOF. We line up the feed just like that. Put some gripper material holding it top and bottom, and then try to find that sweet spot where it's lived for almost 90 years and give it a good push. And that's just about where it was before. See the back of the feed. It's just shy by about 2 or 2.5 millimeters, and that 2 was just visible at the top of the section, if I remember correctly. Well, that looks pretty good. Whenever you put a nib back in a section, it's always important to check on nib clearance, or if you're switching a nib to a different size, check nib clearance. It may fit nicely on the feed in the section, but when you put the cap back on, it crunches that nib inside the cap. This has plenty of cap clearance. And before I put the sack on it, I want to put it back in the section here just to be able to do a dip test on that nib, because if I have to knock that nib out again, I don't want to have to take the sack off. So let's get out some 90 GSM Clairefontaine paper, some Waterman's ink. We're going to dip that nib just a bit into the Waterman Serenity Blue and see what we have. This is a 36. Okay, I need the cap. It's too small to write with. There we go. 1936 Waterman's 92V, and it is a 14 karat gold. Oh, I would say it's a medium to broad nib, and it's very, very wet. Very wet. So that gap that I saw might have to be closed down just a bit. The barrel's still a little bit wet. Ooh, and it's bouncy. Bouncy and flexible. Not a flex nib, mind you, but a classic 14 karat gold vintage nib. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit too wet for my liking, so I'm going to try to close that nib down a little bit without breaking it apart. I pushed those tines together a little bit so that the tines at the very tip are touching each other, and it's still rather wet but very smooth. There's just a little bit of feedback. I might polish that a little bit with some 12,000 grit, but I can go ahead and put a new sack in here because that nib doesn't need to come out again. Okay, now we have all the tools we need to resack this pen. I have a number 16 size sack, the barrel, the section nib and feed, some talc, my sack spreader, and my shellacker pen from the Inky Nib. So first we have to determine how long this sack should be and trim it off. So that's going all the way to the bottom, like that. And the section will go into about there, like that. And so that sack needs to come to the end of the nipple, which is the bottom of the threads. Just measure to the end of the pen and to the threads. I'm just going to make a mark with my thumbnail right there. And snip. We'll put it on our sack spreader and give it a dry run. Looks just about right. It shouldn't crimp up at all at the bottom, and it's probably not touching the bottom of the barrel, which is good as well. So now we have to do it all again, only this time with a little bit of shellac. Just brush it on to the nipple. So just tickle your nipple with some shellac on a brush. We can spread our sack again. These resurrections might have to have an R rating pretty soon. We'll see.
Oh my!
And just slip it under the edge and give it a turn. I like to give it a little bit of a turn so it seals and to make sure it's straight. And then I'm going to give it just a seam of shellac around there. Just some shellac around that seam so there's no leaks at all. And we let that dry for several hours. I'll come back and talc up that sack and we'll put it back in the barrel. And just that little amount of shellac on there, even when it's dry, when I push that back into the barrel again, should keep it from rotating and seal it in the barrel. We'll see you in 6 or 7 hours. And of course I'm not going to wait around for 6 or 7 hours and not do anything, waiting for that to dry. Let's polish up this cap and the clip, the cap ring, and I'm going to go down through my micro mesh from 1500 grit to 12,000 grit. I start at 1500, and if I see any deeper gouges, that will become apparent when I polish it with the 1500. I'll go to the 400 grit flexible sandpaper and get that gouge or nick out. We're going to avoid the gold until we get to about 4,000. And then I can polish up the gold as well. I'll put some masking tape through the first bits of grit, and then we'll finish off with some polishing compound on my buffing wheel. So let's put the cap over here on this side and take a look at it before, and we'll put the polished up cap on the other side so we can see the difference. And there is our cap, all polished up, looking beautiful. The gold polished up beautifully, the top finial, and the barrel's looking flawless. And that cap band is brightened up as well. Beautiful. Let's compare it to the barrel. The barrel is relatively dull. So we'll go through the same process with the barrel, avoiding that imprint. We'll keep it up here so we can show what it looks like before and after. So this is what I mean about starting with the 1500 grit and then inspecting it after the 1500, because where there are shiny spots that I couldn't see before, like there and there's a couple. Those are divots and scratches. There's a couple just below the imprint, and there's a good long scratch right there that the 1500 grit won't get, but it brings it into sharp relief. So you can go at it with the 400 grit and get those marks out. So once those marks are erased, then we can go back at it with the 1500 grit and go through the micro mesh. There, now we have a smooth matte surface with no divots or shiny spots other than just there on the impression. And I did the bottom as well and got those cap marks off of the barrel as well. So now we'll march through the rest of the micro mesh and polish it up with some polishing compound on my buffer wheel. And there's the barrel all polished up. Look at that. It's really spectacular. The imprint is in place around so we can read it. Now, can you spot the one scratch that I missed? I missed it on purpose. Can you spot it? It's around the imprint here somewhere. You can see it in the reflection. Maybe it's right there. See it? It was too close to that S, so I didn't want to get into that imprint too much. I'd have to go at it with some very aggressive sandpaper to get it out because it's so deep. But now it's Waterman's. It's the plural possessive. All the Waterman's. And the other nice surprise was, look at the tip of that lever. It is perfect. I thought there was corrosion or brassing on the end of that, and it's absolutely pristine. So we can go ahead and put that sack back in this barrel when that shellac dries. And here we are, it's the next day, and this is certainly dried overnight. So I'm going to talc up that latex sack and put it back in the barrel, and then we're going to do a test fill. That bit of shellac over brushing that I did should be enough to seal that section to that barrel. And if I can get it in there without heating it up, I'll line up the lever and see whether I can get it all the way in. Yeah, I'm just going to give it a little bit of heat just to crank it down all the way, because there's a little bit of a seam right there. There, I just made it a little bit slippery so I could twist it back and forth, push it all the way in, and get that nib aligned with the lever. And there we go. Now let's get out some ink and my scale. And we're going to weigh the pen empty. 7.16 grams. Press tear. Get out some Waterman's. And I'll probably give this a couple of strokes. Very, very tiny pen. So 0.78, 0.79 milliliters of ink, which is typical for a size 16 sack in a small pen. We had to cut that sack short because the pen is so short. But not bad for a tiny pen. Now let's get out our writing stuff, because I did some adjustments to that nib, and it's still writing very, very wet, but it's also really smooth. So I'd call this Resurrection a success. And I'll be back right now with my thoughts on this Resurrection. So what are my thoughts about this fountain pen Resurrection? These lever filling fountain pens are relatively easy to repair, especially when the nib isn't all twisted up like a pretzel. I was fascinated by the search for this pen's actual model. The incorrect stamp of 52V on the bottom of this pen sent me down a dead end. It was only when I found the 1936 Waterman catalog on the Pen Collectors of America website that I discovered the pen was actually a 92V. My best guess is that Waterman Canada was using up pieces from the discontinued 52 line of pens. The 52V was actually an ebonite lever filler that was made from about 1917 to 1937. In 1936, Waterman changed the model to be celluloid, but it didn't appear in the 1936 catalog or in subsequent catalogs. Now, I may not be correct as to why this pen is mislabeled, but I'm pretty sure this isn't a 52V, but a 92V. Whatever the case, it's a lovely example of a celluloid lever filler from the mid-1930s. Made in 1936, right in the middle of the Great Depression. I'm also sure the price of $3.50 was not something every boy and girl could hope for at Christmas time. The average wage in 1936 for those few who actually held paying jobs was around 43 cents an hour. You'd have to be a pretty lucky boy or girl to get a pen worth $82 in today's money to take to school with you. And today, this restored 1936 Waterman 92V is going to be even more expensive than that, however, as I'm selling it for $150 US plus shipping. If you're interested in purchasing this pen, please send me an email at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address so I can get you a shipping quote. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.